At first glance, Tropico 5 seems dangerously similar to its still recent predecessor. The music, the characters, most of the gags, and the art are almost indistinguishable from Tropico 4. That feeling of deja vu is misleading, however, because Tropico 5 improves on Tropico 4 in at least one key way. It's a more challenging and engaging city builder, one that does a better job of making you feel like the tin pot dictator that you're supposed to be. Tropico 4 always seemed like it was happy to wait for the player to get around to actually managing anything, and the punishment for mediocre performance was never all that severe. Now, as the economic foundations of your island rot away, and new political factions demand new reforms and services, you really do start to feel like an aging dictator scrambling to hold on. Tropico 5 largely sticks to the formula laid down by its predecessor, with a couple key changes. First, it now unfolds across a series of eras. You start in the early 20th century and work your way up to the modern era, though the art doesn't convey the changing periods all that well. The march of time also escalates the challenges you face. The colonial era gives way to the world wars, where both Axis and allies are furiously buying up supplies and vying for your affections. Getting cozy with one gives you the most favorable trading offers, but could also get you swatted down by the other power. That pattern continues through the Cold War era, at which point your problems are starting to become a little more economic and political. They also get more interesting. Each new era brings more factions to the forefront, while your own efforts steadily strip your island of its resources. From the Cold War into the modern era, you have to be thinking about making the switch into a more developed import-export economy, lest your economy stagnate. This helps solve my major issue with Tropico 4, which never really did make me feel like a corrupt dictator. If you simply behaved nicely and built a nice island, there was never much need to crack down on dissidents or worry about rebels taking to the hills. This time around, I found myself relying a lot more on dictatorly tools like assassinations and military crackdowns to handle problems that showed up in the mid-game. Actually, a quick word on the military. Your control over them isn't so great, and their pathfinding can be kind of frustrating. Get used to seeing your tanks basically get lost on their way to the battle the moment they hit the city streets. They do not handle the grid system very well, which makes it a little bit annoying to have combat actually play out in Tropico 5. Still, all this strife is great up to a point, but it starts to unravel in the endgame, when you basically get technologies and buildings that solve every major problem. For instance, in the endgame, you start getting things like office buildings. Office buildings generate revenue based on how many people live nearby, which means you basically plant an office building down, and then you surround it with high-rise apartments. If you manage to buy a couple of these things, you're basically printing money with no downside. The same goes for electricity. You plunk down a new geothermal power plant every time you see a brownout, and your energy problem is instantly solved. No pollution, really, and no need for resources to feed the power supply. The multiplayer game solves some of this by basically putting you in a competitive city-building race against other players. It's a neat twist on Tropico and gives its relaxed pacing some much-needed urgency and stakes. Yet, I have this undeniable sense that something's been lost. It's hard to put my finger on why, but the island seems to have a little less life this time around. Tourist locations don't look as vibrant and lively, the city doesn't seem to bustle as much, and the character models never look like much more than distant specks. In Tropico 4, I could be enthralled by just zooming in and looking at my city and watching it run. Now I mostly play zoomed out, more concerned with math than spectacle. But the larger issue is that while Tropico 5 definitely introduces some new challenges and ideas, it's still a dangerously simple city builder. That's always a threat with this genre. A well-run city doesn't require all that much from the player. But Tropico doesn't give me enough reasons to keep playing once I finish the tech tree and reach the end. It's a tropical vacation, always pleasant and relaxing, and one that I'm always a little grateful to leave behind.